Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's edition of the Value-Based Pricing Colony. My name is Shaun, Jardine, and I'm delighted to have been joined today by Mathew Kerbis, the subscription attorney. I was chatting to Mathew about how we might conduct today, and I thought, because Mathew and I have done podcasts in the past, I've guested on his podcast, and Mathew has also played with Declan, my AI-enabled penguin. And what I thought might be fun to do, just to kick the proceedings off, is to ask Declan a question. So if you bear with me, I demonstrate my complete lack of ability on how to work my own machine. Hopefully there you've got a yellow screen. Mathew, can you confirm it?
Not yet. Click the share button and then click on window, and you can click on the window. There you go. Now I'm starting to see
there you go. It's so handy having someone who actually knows how this stuff works. So this is Declan. We're gonna just wake him up, give him a little prod. Now Mathew has to see that, but I did read Mathew the question briefly, but we're going to put the question in to Declan. You are a law firm owner. You've got some teams that deal mainly with business owner clients. You want to create a plan to go from you want to create a plan to go about setting up a subscription model fee earning service for the business clients within the law firm. How can you do this? What steps should be taken to bring on board lawyers in your business who say this cannot be done? Who would have thought there's such a thing as a lawyer who says it can't be done? Right, let's ask Declan. Oh, he's waddled excitedly. Subscription models, music to my penguin ears. Let me help you chart these waters. We need an initial planning phase. Start small, pick one practice area or team as a pilot. Identify your most loyal clients that might be receptive. Analyze current work patterns. What services do these clients regularly need? Map out different service tiers, bronze, silver, gold, perhaps. Package design. And he talks about what that might look like. Basic quarterly health checks, standard document reviews, add monthly advisory calls, priority response times, unlimited access, dedicated lawyer contacts, strategic planning, and remember to include clear scope boundaries. Declan is very good about scoping. For the naysayer lawyers, here's how to handle them. Show, don't tell. Present case studies from other successful firms. Share data on retention rates with subscription models. Calculate potential steady revenue streams versus feast and famine billing. Address their fears, which are we'll lose money, clients will abuse it, it's too complicated. Have the practical steps. Create small working groups of enthusiastic lawyers. Run a 3-month pilot with select clients. Document successes and learnings and use this evidence to convince others. Declan then actually says, why not join the value-based pricing colony? Who knew? And remember, the billable hour is like a penguin trying to fly. It just doesn't work. Modern clients want predictability and value, and subscription models deliver both. So there you go, Mathew. That's what Declan thinks.
Look, Shaun, I'll give Declan a B on the grading scale here, because it's solid, right? It's a solid answer. And obviously, I'm sure you could follow a prompt. Okay, I like the run a 3-month pilot with select clients. Like, let's go deep on that, right? So that might be like a follow-up prompt that I might ask Declan, because I think that might be the most important thing you could do as a law firm that's thinking about the subscription model, because really, looking at these areas and what it's suggesting, present case studies, there's not a lot of case studies, right? I think there's no actual case studies. The closest thing to a case study is my podcast, Law Subscribed, or you can listen to lawyers who are talking about, at least anecdotally, how they've ditched the billable hour and are leveraging the subscription model in their law practice, right? That's what the whole podcast is about. And of course, I've had folks on who are just talking about value-based pricing broadly and ditching the billable hour broadly, because there's value to getting in that mindset of time doesn't equal money. And even if it does, less time equals more money. Is the way to think about it, right? And for you and for your clients when you're not billing by the hour. So I would love to see what does that pilot program look like, right? Because really, if there's not a lot of case studies, and if most of the lawyers who have been a guest on Law Subscribed are solo and small firm lawyers, and you're at a mid-sized or larger firm, that's not going to help you, right? So but getting your hands dirty and actually polling your clients about, hey, we're going to launch this program. We're only going to let 3 clients as part of this program. You know, the first 3 that say yes, you're going to be opted into this program. We're going to not track time at all. I mean, maybe you do track time, but, you know, like you have to figure that out based on what your clients are thinking. But, you know, we're going to not track time. We're going to charge you X amount a month, and we're going to deliver all the same services and more that you've come to expect from us. You know, we're going to run a, you know, it's whatever it is. So it says a 3-month program. That would be at a minimum. I would say you probably want to do a 6-month program or a year-long program to actually have some solid data, because like every quarter is different for your business, for your clients' businesses. And so you probably want at least 6 months. You get 2 different quarters in there to see like, you know, what's happening. And you know, the spend or the need might be different at certain times of a year, right? Like at the end of the year in the US, if your fiscal year is the annual year, like I'm doing a lot of stuff for you at the end of the year as your small business lawyer, right? As your fractional GC for your small business. So like end of year, 3 months is different than the first 3 months of the year. But that's really going to be the best way to do it. And like, and those attorneys who are on those clients cannot be penalized for not tracking time, or for, if they are tracking time, not having so many hours, because it's not about time equals money. It's about the value being delivered for the value being paid for those services during that time. Like that's what it comes down to. So like to really do a successful program, you need to not penalize those lawyers who are doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I realize I didn't give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and say who you are and what you do. And do you want to quickly do that?
Yeah. So no problem, Shaun. And look, I'm on the internet. You know, if people wanted to go to MathewKerbis.com, that's my speaker portfolio. You know, you could hear me talking about myself plenty there. I'll suffice to say I've always been a small law lawyer. And actually my first job as a practicing attorney was in the foreclosure defense space. So we were keeping a roof over people's heads while the banks were foreclosing on them. And interestingly enough, because most lawyers don't think about business, but interestingly enough, the owner of that firm, he was just charging a fixed monthly rate as long as we could keep people in their homes. There's the subscription model. I didn't even think about it like that back then. I was a new baby lawyer. I wasn't thinking about business model. I was thinking about I just want to make as much money as I can to pay down these student loans and get as much experience as I possibly can while doing it. And you know, what I ended up doing is ended up at a billable hour firm, you know, as we all do, you know, as most of us do these days if you're in private practice. Was billing time, hating it. I was, you know, clients were afraid to call me. And then when clients would call me and I would resolve their problem in a minute or 2 over the phone, the time it would take to open a file and bill them the 0.2, like it wouldn't, like we would have spent more money billing that client in the traditional billing model, right? So I was thinking, how do we capture this? How do I actually enjoy my life? And I just started asking clients, like, hey, like, what if, I mean, I did research on it. I discovered the subscription model and like, I went deep on it. And I said, hey, what if I just charged you like the same amount every month, and then you could just call me and I could like help you with the limited amount of things. And if you needed me to help you with more things, I charge you more per month. And they were like, yeah, could you do that? And then it took like 2+ years of me like figuring it out inside another firm, trying to make it work. And then a pandemic having to happen for the firm to be like, oh, that subscription thing you were working on. Hey, now that half of our billable time that used to be spent in courts, now that's gone. You know, how about, you know, we revisit this subscription thing? And so we did, but they still wanted me to try to hit billable hour quotas along the way. And so I left to start my own practice in March of 2022 is when I actually launched. And it was before AI, like current AI, like what AI means today. Like back then, AI meant if this, then that, logic-based AI, machine learning AI, based on large data sets, but still very deterministic based, right? So it wasn't super useful for law practice. It was okay for e-discovery, but not great for like other areas of practicing law. But I launched with the promise to my clients, and the firm is Subscription Attorney LLC in the U.S. based out of Illinois, so I could help any client that's in Illinois. And it was a promise of not tracking time. And if you go outside the scope for too much, that like we're just going to bump you up to a higher subscription level. Like that's the value of having a subscription model versus just fixed fee work, where what happens when it goes outside the scope of the fixed fee? Well, like you got to have a whole other conversation about like, okay, the scope is changing, and we have in our engagement agreement the scope is changing, so we have to do this, we have to do that. With the subscription model, it's just like, okay, you're going up to the next tier, and if you don't have a tier for that, you make one up. I have been in business for myself now for over 3 years, and I've had on I don't think it's been at least 3 times, maybe more, but at least 3 times I've had clients before I even though I was planning on telling them, hey, I got to bump you up to a higher monthly subscription based upon, me working with you and you working with me. They've contacted me first. Hey, I'm getting tons of value. And I realize I've kind of gone, I've done 1 extra project or 2 extra projects for the last month or 2. I think I need to pay you more money. What client comes to a lawyer and says, I think I want to pay you more money? A few of my clients. Now, to the pricing experts out there, like, sorry, Ron Baker, if you watch this recording, yes, and Mark Stiving too. Was I leaving some money on the table? Well, maybe in the short term. And I actually think Ron would probably agree with me on that. That you want to look at lifetime value, right? So you want to have happy clients, because what's different from fixed fee versus subscription is with lifetime value, you want them to stay subscribed longer. And if the moment they went outside their scope, they got one more legal project that month than what they're paying for the monthly basis, if I reach out to them and said, I got to bump you up right away, what's the likelihood that they're going to stay subscribed longer if I'm so focused on just that narrow, one project that went over? Whereas I could be magnanimous, and now they could stay subscribed, and they're going to be a happier client and stay subscribed for longer, and the revenue I'll be able to generate from that client will be more over a long period of time without focusing on short-term profits, right? And so, yes, I was leaving maybe some money on the table, but that's okay in the long run, because I'm going to generate so much more revenue from that client long term. So anyway, that's a little bit more than just an explanation of my background. In the context of this conversation, I wanted to color it a little bit more, Shaun, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Abby, I've got a million questions I can ask Mathew, but is there anything you'd like to address, either with your COO hat on, or perhaps as in your status as being the chair of the Law Society Management section? Is there anything that jumps out to you about subscription modeling?
I mean, I'm intrigued from a personal perspective to understand, I guess, the difference between this and a retainer model, and to understand the full scope of where you think this subscription model, where its sweet spot is, and what it can and can't cover. And you're probably going to say it can cover everything, but practical examples of how that might work would be useful. And I know a couple of firms who have either gone down this route. I mean, Darby's did purple law and blue law back in the day. I don't know, obviously they folded in Snide, so I don't ever know what actually happened to that. But I know a couple of other law firms which are ditching the billable hour. And so, just, overall really interested in the subject. And in terms of the leadership and management section of the Law Society, obviously we're just always interested in finding out, what's actually happening on the ground, so that we can reflect it in the training and other events that we put on. So not a question, more a statement of why I'm here.
Yeah, you're spot on, Abby, right? Like I would say it could work in any practice area, but the way it's going to work is going to be different, right? Depending on that. And I've been at conferences talking about this, or on Zooms like this, and you'll have like an estate planning lawyer that's like, well, it will never work for me, but I could see how it could work for family law. And then a family law attorney will say, well, it would never work for me, but I could see how it could work for an estate planning attorney, right? So like lawyers might think it could work for other practice areas, but maybe not their own. But really, and I was just at a conference a couple weekends ago, and it was all family law attorneys, and not a single one of them had used alternative fees. And really, I was there to talk about technology and like generative AI and how that's going to affect the billable hour. But I didn't just want to tell them about that. I also wanted to explain the alternative fees out there and what you're going to do about it from a business model perspective. And I asked them, I said, how many of you actually have stopped and critically thought about your business model ever? And like none of them raised their hands, right? Because they didn't. But they're also really smart. Like I've never met a lawyer, solicitor, whatever nomenclature you prefer or use in your jurisdiction, that like wasn't really bright. And like if they actually applied their critical thinking to anything, they could come up with some really creative ideas. And so they just never stop to think about their business model. That's just the way it's done, right? And when you're swimming in water and you don't know you're in water, you don't think about the water that you're in and like how that affects the way you move about, right? So some of it just comes down to like just taking a beat and thinking about it, right? Like, okay, like let's say, like the thought experiment I like to give at the end of a presentation sometimes is, let's say your licensing body says we're banning the billable hour. It's unethical. We've determined it's unethical, but we're not going to just ban it today. We're going to give you 1 year, effective the 1st of next year, depending on when it is or whatever, you will not be allowed to bill by the hour anymore. What would you do? Right? You'd figure it out. You'd come up with a plan. Maybe you'd use Declan. You'd use the AI offering that Shaun has as part of the colony to strategize and come up with a step-by-step plan, right? Instead of thinking about, because time, the idea that like time is a proxy for value is just lazy. Like it's easy, right? Like it's like that might be why like people use it. It's just like I don't have to think about the actual value of the services I'm delivering. It's just like, okay, we'll say however long it takes, we'll assign a dollar amount to that. But in like a Gen AI world, tasks that used to take 10 hours can now take 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, because really it takes like 1 minute, but in the 10 minutes, you have a higher quality product than in the 10 hours, right? And at $500 an hour, $5,000 of billable work is now billable at $100, right? And it just doesn't, is the value less when they have faster work product that's of higher quality? Because in those 10 minutes, you get your answer in a minute or two. And then in the next 8 to 9 minutes, you're having a back and forth conversation with the Gen AI tool that significantly increases the quality of your product. You don't even have to go in there and edit. You could say, I want it to be in more an active voice, right? Could you use less legalese? Or take this paragraph, take this indemnification clause and make it mutual, and it just does it. And is it going to be the exact words maybe that you wanted? You could go in there and edit it. But if it's like when you look at substance over form and getting quality work products, same day turnaround sometimes, I mean, like it just doesn't make sense. Like there's diminishing returns, significant, and it's only going to get more diminishing with billing time, right? So then what do you do? Right? Well, then you start, and you could use these AI tools to be like, what value do I provide? That might even not be legal services, like traditional legal services. Like still legal judgment will be the most valuable thing lawyers provide. That's not going anywhere, right? Like even when the AI outputs the contract or the brief or the analysis or whatever, like we're still applying our legal minds and having judgment about whether that is good, bad, what that means for our client, communicating that to our client. It just doesn't take a lot of time now when all the drudge work is being done so fast. So like there's still value there, but even things like I will now charge my clients separately. I have 2 clients who actually pay for this separately, but I bundled it in with my higher level subscriptions. Like when you unbundle all your services and all the things you could offer, like serving as registered agent for my clients. Like, like previously they would use like another service for that. Now my clients happen to be like local, most of my clients. So they're not going to be doing business in multiple jurisdictions. So they just they're small businesses in the state of Illinois. Most of my clients are even pretty local to me. So that works for them, right? But like registered agent is not like a legal service, but it's sometimes something that law firms will give away for free. But now it's a value add to my subscribers at a certain level. And if you really want to pay for that separately, I do have a monthly price for that, right? So like you really start to break down and think about stuff. And timing and place matters too, right? So to use family law and estate planning as examples, when you finish an estate plan for a client, and I will say, like, I think fractional general counsel work that I do, actually, it's the easiest place that it makes sense, right? Like you have so many legal projects a month, you pay X amount for those many legal projects. You have more legal projects, you pay more per month. Like fractional GC, I think it's one of the easiest ways to understand that this just works. It just works, right? You're taking an in-house counsel model for large corporations, and you're fractionalizing it for a fraction of the need for smaller businesses for a fraction of the price. Like it's the easiest place. That's part of the reason that's why where I slot in. That's why I choose to do it. But even for traditional practice areas, you finish an estate plan, and it's like you're one and done. You're done. Like what do? Well, things change, right? So for an annual subscription, we will have one check-in, a year. And, it has to price it based on your market, based on, the market you're serving, the area that you're in, and what, like the actual number. I mean, that's what Shaun is good at too, is like the pricing stuff, the actual putting the numbers on it. Or for people who want more than one check-in, well, that's going to be a higher annual subscription. We're going to do 2 check-ins. Maybe we're going to do a quarterly check-in, but they prepay for that as an annual subscription, so they show up to their check-in. And what's something that they get? They're also getting a discount on fixed fee services for if we need to make any changes. And if they're paying the premium annual subscription, they just get them. There's no additional fees, right? So like how you choose to define your subscriber benefits matters, and the way that you structure it matters. For any sort of litigation, whether it's family law or anything else, I believe that the best way to approach that is just like when you sign up for some other things. There's like an initiation fee. There's like a setup fee. Well, with litigation, there's a lot of work in the beginning, right? So you gotta, file the complaint, respond to the complaint, propound discovery, review discovery, whatever. And a lot of that takes place up front. So you have a fixed fee plus subscription model, right? Where you're paying a higher amount up front to get started and then a monthly rate throughout. And depending on the practice area, when you hit certain milestones, when you get to oral discovery, when you get to expert discovery, when you get to trial, that monthly rate goes up, right? Because now things are getting more complicated. And what you could have is a success fee that goes down, right? So if we settle, within 6 months or before we hit this phase, our success fee is X amount and it's higher. But if we start to, get into later in litigation, that success fee goes down. So you align incentives between you and the client, right? And then even post-litigation, because in certain things, and this is also true in like the M&A space or like whenever there's like a closing, but when there's like a transaction that happens and it's over, but there's post-closing, post-settlement, divorce decree or judgment at trial compliance, a maintenance plan, right? Like a monthly or a quarterly or an annual or biannual maintenance plan, right? Hey, we have to make sure you comply with your probation for criminal law. We have to make sure you comply with the, requirements of the M&A transaction, right? Post-closing. We have to make sure you comply with the divorce decree or the marital settlement agreement when it comes to, child care and when it comes to other sorts of alimony or support or whatever, right? So like you could take those ideas and you could extrapolate them and adapt them and apply them to whatever practice area, I think. I know that was a long answer to your question, Abby. Sorry about the length of that.
I think you hit that nail on the head there with moving people off tiers to the next tier. And that's something that even when I'm working with law firms saying, look, we can do a version service. Think of it like an airline ticket. Everybody gets on an aeroplane, gets off at the, subject to it going well, everybody gets on at the Heathrow and gets off at Cape Town. I go to South Africa. That's the service. The service you receive on that plane, you go on and turn left, you're going to get a glass of champagne, the smoked salmon blini very quickly. You go to the very end of the plane, it's going to be 45 minutes before you see the drinks trolley. And it's encouraging lawyers to even then say, if you're creating a gold, silver, bronze, don't call it gold, silver, bronze, but a 3-tiered product, that you've then got to have this conversation with them about you bought a bronze package, but you're ringing me as though you're a gold client and you're not. And that is one of the things that I find so many lawyers don't want to have that conversation. And I just wondered, is that something you've come across, Matthew?
Yeah. And really, that's like, I would, being a parent of a young child, thinking about positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement, I would even flip that a little bit, Shaun. And I would say, like with that type of client, I would say, you thought you were a bronze client, but you know what? You're a gold client. Like, look at you, gold client. You're such a good gold client. Let me charge you the gold client rate because your needs are so important that you, sir or madam, you're a gold client. Like, you make it a positive thing, right? Like, not like look, you thought you were this, really you're this, you're not this, you're not. I would be like, no, like you're special. You're special and you want to be special and you're special. And I'm happy to provide those services for you, gold client. But it's going to cost you this, and it's going to cost you this, not but, and it's going to cost you this, right? So that's how I would handle those types of conversations. I saw Colin unmuted. Hey, Colin.
Hi, guys. Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can, Colin. Welcome.
Thanks very much. It took me a little bit to get in, but I'm not sure, but the initial link didn't work. Maybe you heard this already. So yeah. Anyway, here I am.
All right. And we're just having a conversation, Colin. So if you have questions, feel free to interrupt, feel free to tell me about your practice or what brings you here, and I could help, comment on it.
Well, maybe I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm in Vancouver, as you can see behind me, and I'm a legal management consultant. I've worked with firms for, God, 40 years now. And of course, when I remember when I first started, the first thing I heard about, this would have been mid 80s. Oh, we're going to do alternative billing, and isn't it wonderful, et cetera, et cetera. So here we are 40 years later, still talking about our alternative billing and making it happen. But one of the, I guess, in terms of subscription billing, one thing I've heard about, of course, here, at least here in North America, is Legal Shield. So as I'm listening to what you're saying about, the different plans, 1995, et cetera. So Legal Shield's been around for, I don't know, 20 years, maybe 10 years. I don't know the exact time frame. Maybe you do. And firms have different degrees of success with that program. And some are happy with it. But what I do notice is firms that use Legal Shield with their clients, there's a lot of turnover in terms of the providers. So if there's a BC provider here, they might be with it 2-3 years, and then it moves on to somebody else. And again, some of the terms might be longer, but what I have noticed is a lot of the clients that come in are more, I'd call, lower quality clients. So firms get frustrated a bit with that. And as I'm listening to you with the gold, silver, bronze clients, maybe that's a way to kind of filter out, the people who are, how would I say, the looky-loos, or they're just looking to basically get a really incredible deal, but it'll effectively bankrupt the firm to do it. So sorry, I'm jumping here in the middle, but those
great.
are kind of my off the cuff comments. I'm really interested in your thoughts. Thanks.
Colin, I think that's great, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because usually when I'm on a call or at a conference with like legal industry folks, that almost never, I don't think that's ever come up before, but I get that from clients and potential clients. Well, how are you different than Legal Shield? And I actually have some clients who considered that as an alternative, or who were burned and didn't like the Legal Shield experience. And the easiest answer is it's totally different. Like that would be like saying I'm going to take a Greyhound bus versus an airplane. Yeah, sure, they're both transportation, but they're just totally different ways to get from point A to point B, right? So Legal Shield is legal insurance. It's not a law firm. When you pay them, you're not actually paying a law firm. You're paying an insurance company that has contracted with law firms. And when I was just getting started, like with my own practice, I've been practicing for over 10 years, but I've had my own firm now for over 3 years. I was signing up at every platform, right? Like where to get business from. Like I was still figuring out what works, right? And I actually found that like being involved with my local chamber of commerce as a small business fractional GC was great for my business. And I've leaned into that. I mean, I'm generating significant revenue for my $700 annually for my platinum membership with my chamber. I'm generating tens of thousands of dollars through the chamber, right? But Legal Shield would not let me sign up, and here's why. I have no billable rate because I don't track time and I don't bill by the hour. I'm a true alternative fee-based law firm, right? And I guess I'll throw up, like, Law Subscribed is my podcast, but I'll throw up my background here for my actual practice for subscription attorney. So, I'm a law firm. I'm a lawyer. I'm not legal insurance, right? When my clients subscribe to my law firm, they get me. With Legal Shield, what a lawyer has to agree to when they sign up is they have to agree to a reduced billable rate. And it's like 25 plus, % off your billable rate. So you find every opportunity you can to get rid of the subscriber benefits and go to your reduced billable rate when you're a lawyer on the platform. You're incentivized to do that because you're going to make more money. When you stop tracking time and you don't have a billable rate because you don't bill by the hour, all the incentives change and shift, right? So now I'm incentivized to just get the stuff done. So when you say it ends up costing them a lot of money, that sounds like you're doing cost-based accounting, which is flawed for a lot of reasons that we don't have enough time to go into for now. But you know what the costs are to run a business? It's your operating expenses and what you're paying your people. Those are your costs. That's it. You don't think to think of cost as, oh, this task took me so long and there's X rate and like that. That's cost-based accounting, and it's fictional. It's like a fiction. Like we just make it up, right? It's kind of all made up. But when you're not billing by the hour, if you can get work done faster, like even if you track time, and I've come around on this. I've come around on it's okay to track time, in particular when you're switching from billing time to alternative fee based. But your mindset has to shift to, okay, this thing took us 10 hours. Not that cost us 10 hours of our billable rate, but it's how do we make that take 9 hours, 5 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes, automate it. It doesn't take us any time now. And when you're doing cost-based accounting, you're not able to think like that. And so you have to stop thinking about time equals money. I have a billable rate and like these clients cost me whatever, because you're also, that focuses you on and we did talk about this a little bit in the beginning, but it focuses you on like just this one matter or just this one instance for this one client. And did that one thing take more time than other things? But you want to take a portfolio perspective for that client, for all their matters, for all of your clients. And if you're saving time in aggregate far more, then you're net way more profitable when all of your clients across the board are in this model. And yeah, sure, that one client might take extra time for one thing here or there or on occasion. First of all, you have to make sure your services are priced accordingly anyway. So like, even if that does happen, you're still profitable. But will they continue to be a client longer? Because you're not tracking their time, and they are not afraid to contact you and bring you more work. So in the long term, for the lifetime value, because with the subscription model, they're subscribed to you, you're going to generate more. Like the difference is like, okay, I could take I have an apple and this client is the apple, and I could take one bite of that apple and I get one juicy bite for this one matter for this client. And I'm going to take as big of a bite, as many billable hours as I possibly can. But you get one bite at the apple with that client, because you might burn that relationship, and you might not even be able to develop a relationship. And you get to bite that apple in 1 to 3 years, for a lot of matters. Well, what if you could eat the whole apple? What if you could take those seeds from that apple and plant them and grow an apple tree from that client? And you're able to eat bushels of apples from that client. It's just going to be over 30, 50, 100 years. If you have a long, the firm that could last beyond your life, right? So like, that's what you're thinking about. But and you want to have more apples at a time from different clients, but you're taking smaller bites of the apple over time is the analogy I like to give. What do you think?
Yeah, just thinking about what you're saying and agree to a certain extent, but again, every client's different, right? You look at value pricing, every client has different needs. They're looking for different value. So some of them may want hourly, some of them may want fixed fee, some of them may want contingency fee billing, et cetera. So I think for many firms, it's good to have all of those things available. And if you read any of Ron Baker's stuff, which I'm sure you have, it's you're providing what the client needs, and they value, every client has their own value that they're providing, their own particular needs.
The only client who likes billable hours are in-house attorneys who used to bill by the hour.
And there's lots of them.
Yeah,
right? There's many
true.
big firms, in-house counsel. So you should be laying out 3 different options. One's value pricing. Okay, you really like hourly billing. So there's what that option looks like. And here's what, say, contingency billing looks like as an example. But
I
agreed
with you. Like, Colin, I agreed with you 3 years ago. I thought the same thing. I thought you could have multiple offerings, but I was convinced by another subscription model expert, Robbie Kelman-Baxter. And I actually think these days Ron would agree, because Ron has also become a friend over the years. But Robbie said, when you have multiple business models, because that's what that is, that's having multiple business models, none of them are going to be successful. And some more anecdotal evidence is there's an attorney, Jess Birkin. She does nonprofit law in the U.S. based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And what she did is she offered 2 business models for a year. Here's our billable, like whenever she would engage a new client, here's the engagement agreement for billable hours, here's the engagement agreement for subscription. And she was managing that, right? Like for a year. And for a year, no new client ever picked the billable hour. Now, obviously she was biased and, she was slanted towards, trying to convince them to do subscription, obviously, right? But she offered it for a year. And when no new client for a year picked billable hours, she still had legacy clients, that she was managing on the billable hour. But because she was designing systems and efficiencies around her subscription-based nonprofit clients, those billable hour firms just stopped using her services, right, over time.
Mm-hmm.
And she went all in on subscription, right? So like, certainly I'd say, and what you missed in the beginning too is Shaun ran through Declan, like what to do. And they said, like, run a pilot program, like do a pilot program, take some clients, take some lawyers at the firm, like, and my addition was don't penalize them for not hitting billable hour requirements. If you're actually going to do this, that has to, you have to get rid of their quota for that pilot program and like see it and see how it goes. Right. And like, I think once you start to do it, you're going to see so much of the value that if you do it right, if you don't track time, if you don't assign time value to dollars, if you're tracking time to the extent that you're saying, how can we do things faster? Then I think you're going to say, well, how could we possibly roll this out across the whole firm? It's my happiest, some more anecdotal evidence, Colin, is my happiest clients are clients who used to pay outside counsel billable hours. And I thought my happiest clients when I was getting started would be these small mom and pop business owners who like they maybe never hired a lawyer before because they just thought it was unaffordable. But they have nothing to compare it to. Like my happiest clients are my bigger clients that are still hiring Kirkland and Ellis for large M&A transactions, but I'm their everyday lawyer. That they don't. It's like there's no tracking time.
Yes.
So I feel like conceptually I agree with you, and I did agree with you, and I've just been proven wrong about that. And so that's what I would just challenge. And it's okay, like a transition period. Give yourself a transition period as a firm, right? Okay, for the next year we'll have 2 business models, but if we hit such and such metrics, or if we're if the lawyers who are on the pilot program are happier because they get to go home at 4 o'clock, or they get to work 4 days a week because the clients are happy, they keep paying, all the work's getting done. Like I feel like it will win. Like the subscription model or value-based pricing will always win. You'll have happier clients who get faster work product because they're incentivized to get faster work product, right? And it will win out, I think, if you have multiple models for time.
Okay, I will push back a little bit on that because most of the firms I deal with, they're general service firms. They're doing litigation, they're doing solicitors' work, and frankly, within the firms, they operate on different business models, ignoring the pricing part. I mean, solicitors, the corporate commercial department, they've got more costs. They're levering more. Litigation tends to be much more, lean, if you will. And so, they're operating on an hourly basis quite happily. It's more difficult to kind of get litigation, doing it in phases, doing fixed fees per phase, et cetera. So the solicitors, it's really, I can see it happening as long as you pick the right clients. And I think I'll go back to the Legal Shield example. I think one of the big reasons that failed is because you're just taking anybody. It's volume, and that's how firms use this, that type of a subscription-based service. And I think I'm intrigued by your gold, silver, bronze example. I only heard bits and pieces of it just as I came in, but maybe is that a way that you're ensuring this is my ideal client that I'm bringing in, or they meet, they're going to pay their bills. You've got criteria for that, and they're not just looking for rock bottom deals, that kind of thing. So I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, really great question. The gold, silver, bronze was more like it's analogous to like an actual model, right? We were just using that as an example.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say, if it's okay, I don't know if I could share my screen here. Well, in any event, I can still talk about it, but sometimes I like to have a visual aid.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we can talk.
Yeah. So, okay, great. I can share my screen. So let me share my screen here. So I take a slightly different approach with the, like the down market of it all. Have you heard of the concept of the latent legal market?
No.
And not everybody has. So, I mean, I was just at a conference of 350 plus attorneys and I never heard this term before. So the latent legal market, to give it some color first, Grandview Research, which is one of these research, firms, they estimated that, and here's the link to that if you're interested, that $400 billion was spent on the U.S. legal market in 2024. And most of my focus is on the U.S. market. I know that, everyone else there is outside the market. But I'm sure this is true of other markets too, and Grandview Research may have the data on that. So the World Justice Project estimates that in the United States, and this is 2019 is the most accurate data I could find. So it's actually, I've seen some reports from Legal Services Corporation that might actually say this is a higher number. It's higher than 77. But 77% of legal issues go unresolved by lawyers in the U.S. So that means 23% of the market, or less, is being addressed. So with a little bit of inverse math, that $400 billion that was spent, there's a $1.3 trillion market opportunity where more than 50% of legal services are still charged by the hour in the United States. So if you think about, and that's just people who have a legal problem that know they have a legal problem, because a lot of the issues with lawyers and getting the word out there, and what my subscription model works really well with is I issue spot for my clients. But like if someone is a victim of domestic violence, they might not know that they could hire a civil lawyer to get a restraining order, to get some other things. They might think of it as criminal, but not of like, oh, I could hire a civil lawyer, right? So like there are instances where I don't think that percentage accounts for people who don't know they have a legal problem. So I would actually estimate that it's probably closer or above $2 trillion of a market opportunity. So some of that's a branding problem, but some of that is also down market, right? Because billable hours are only affordable by large corporations, high net worth individuals, and people that have no other choice. That's it. That's who could afford billable hours. But there's a massive market of opportunity for people who they just need pricing certainty. My small business owner clients, they're generating millions of dollars in revenue a year, but it's tight margins and they need pricing certainty with their legal spend. This is why I don't care about teaching lawyers how to do what I do. You know, I do some consulting, like where they pay me, but like I give everything away for free on the podcast and other things because I'm not worried about competition. And the more lawyers doing what I'm doing, the more awareness it brings as a whole that, oh, this is a way you could hire a lawyer. And so there's actually huge market opportunity. Like, yes, you will get some bottom of the barrel clients, but if you set up your pricing in the right way, like they quickly self-select out. So like my actual subscription started at $20 a month. So like how do you qualify a client for Subscription Attorney LLC? You are located in Illinois or transacting in Illinois and you've got $20. But my subscriptions are month to month. And if it's not a good fit, they can unsubscribe. I could disengage. And what does that do? It gives them a little bit of skin in the game so they could actually get legal advice, but it costs them something. And no one's ever going to get free legal advice from me. It's going to cost them at least $20. But that's pretty much all they get. They get access to subscription add-ons, access to fixed fee pricing, access to scheduling 15-minute calls at the end of my day. That's it. That's what they get. They get access to those things. They may not use that access. And if they do use that access, then they pay $50 a page if it's some random document. And I have my engagement agreement, like I don't do IP law, I don't do criminal law, I don't do anything that involves going to court, right? Like I'm a generalist. And if you talk to me before there's a big problem, I could help you avoid a big, expensive legal problem that would require a specialist, right? I say miles wide, inches deep law, although there are some areas I go miles deep on. But I'm mostly mile wide, inches deep law, which we could keep you out of the need for that. So I'm the triage lawyer, right? The general practitioner. And okay, you need an MRI, you need to get a trademark. Here's some fixed fee attorneys I know who do that for you, right? And I'm like their quarterback. I'm like their true GC, right? But if they're paying me $50 a page, that actually scales better than you think. I helped a couple of comics in Chicago with their comedy couple agreements where they're getting paid, $1,000 or a little more. Is it worth it for them to pay their lawyer $150 to help them review and advise on a 3-page contract? Absolutely. What about helping some physician clients of mine when they're moving from one medical practice to another and they've got 2 30-page employment agreements? So that's 60 pages for me. That's thousands of dollars. That's good money. Now, for my small business owner who hires me to analyze their commercial lease that they're about to sign, that's like a 20 or 30-page document. Like that's, it's a couple $1,000 maybe, depending on exactly how many pages it is. But very quickly, they could realize that, if I'm paying you per page for everything that you're doing for me, employment agreements, handbooks, vendor contracts, master services agreements, whatever, it's going to get really expensive. But they could just pay me $1,000 a month, $2,500 a month. And I'll just work on so many legal projects for them a month. We stop counting pages. So there is still, I give my clients a little bit of choice, like a metered approach. But a client knows what a page is. They don't know what an hour is. Why did that take an hour? I put it into ChatGPT and it pumped it out and it was done in a few seconds. Now, to the lay person, they think it's the same. A legal expert looks at ChatGPT's product and my work product that took 5 hours, and I know my work product is accurate and correct and right. But the layperson doesn't know that. So like just giving them something that they can understand, like per page pricing, where you could still price it at a price that people are willing to pay. I launched at $100 a page. Nobody paid it. Nobody hired me per page. I was like, what's the lowest I could charge where I still feel like I'm making a profit? And I just tried $50. And all of a sudden people started paying me $50 a page, right? Like my subscription revenue to my fixed fee revenue, granted, I use a membership model approach, right? In order to get my fixed fee revenue, you must be paying at least $20 a month. It's like 60-40, right? So 60% of my revenue is like subscription, but still a nice chunk of my revenue is fixed fee-based work that I'm doing. But they're all subscribers to my business. They're all subscribers to the firm, and getting them up that chain. So yes, the $20 a month, any low level, junk client could sign up at that level, but they're really not going to leverage my services. Maybe they don't want to pay $50 a page, so they unsubscribe. Fine, no problem. But to the small business owner who could test me out at $20 a month and $50 a page, and I could get them up that chain, that is immensely valuable. And it's why I'm going to always offer this entry level, super low pricing to just get people in the door so that I can get them up that chain if it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, they're not going to be subscribed for long. And that's okay. I'm not a subscription business. I'm not a software business. I don't worry about churn. I don't have investors, So again, sorry, Abby, I saw you unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. It's interesting because the SRA have, and Shaun, you'll know this, have just authorized Garfield law to now do letters before action for £2 a pop. And we tend to call it the justice gap, I think, more than the unrealized or latent market. And yes, so I know what you're talking about, but the term is different. But yeah, we call it the justice gap, which is the gap between the people who can afford or who even know that the issue they're dealing with is a legal issue, or there is a legal redress that they can take, and then whether they can access that. But AI is opening up where, even a very, very small business can now find an SRA, who's our regulator, an SRA regulated firm who can give them a £2 letter. So that's now going to be your competition, isn't it? It's going to be changed from a subscription model to a pay-as-you-go when the page count is £1.50, maybe. So I just, there's always a disruption to the disruptor, and it's just, and taking Colin, your point is that there will always be people who will want the certainty of it, of having a subscription. But I think about my gym membership. I pay that on subscription. And then after about 6 months, when I find out I haven't used it, I cancel it. And then I just go along to the pay-as-you-go gym whenever I need it. Yeah, I do that calculation in my head. But presumably you're just talking with people who are doing this calculation in your head and who are working out that it's better value for money for them to have the subscription model than to pay-as-you-go.
Yeah. Like Legal Shield even offers like a free will, right? And powers of attorney and stuff. And I charge $400 for that, which is still the cheapest for a lawyer to charge for that. And you sign up for whatever, $20 or $30 a month with Legal Shield, and that's a subscriber benefit. Here's your will. And I got a client who was considering doing that by just saying, hey, look, like you could go ask other lawyers what they charge to give you a simple estate plan package. Mine's all automated, right? Because 90% of it for 99% of the market, that's all they need. That's all I need, right? And those high net worth individuals that could afford $10,000 for an estate plan, they could afford it. But you actually get a lawyer that if you need to make customizations to that estate plan, that's part of what you're paying for with my package. It's created in an instant. You fill out the form and it makes the documents. But now you actually get, for the $400, you get to talk to a lawyer.
You're getting your review.
Yeah. And so all it is just, I think competition's a great thing because that's going to create more innovation, right, definitely. In order to compete. Yeah. And maybe I need to, have even a better product, or maybe I have to, shrink that price or offer a plus version, which I do offer a plus version of that. If people want to pay more when I've got them, and they see the value. And the other reason I even offer estate planning is because every single potential client I ever talk to is like, oh, I need a will, or I need like a trust. Like I've been told I need a trust by like my financial advisor. Like, could you do that for me? So I was like, well, okay, I need to figure out how to like create an automated package that does these things. And it's not always the right fit. If somebody's already in a memory care facility, that's not a simple estate plan. If somebody, has a divorce and they have other issues, or they've got like, they own a bunch of real estate, I am not the right estate planning lawyer for you. You need to go hire an estate plan. Yeah. So some of it is really segmentation, going back to what Colin said about, ideal clients and all that. And I would say those clients who use Garfield, and I subscribe to Artificial Lawyers, so I saw that, and I looked at Garfield. I thought that was really interesting. I love stuff like that because, like, here's the thing. I don't want them calling me. They will never actually be happy and a good client of mine. Now they actually have an alternative in the market they could go to. Now I don't have to take that 15-minute, Zoom call, that intro call, right? So that's great because they were not going to be happy with me being, their attorney anyway. So please, like, bring that in by all means. going back to the latent legal market, we call it the access to justice gap too. But even I would say like legal aid stuff, like they can't afford $20 a month. So like that's what legal aid is for, right? But there's this messy middle where they don't qualify for legal aid, but they can't afford billable hours. It's a huge market opportunity. Bring on the competition. All I really need are 40 to 50 solid, paying me hundreds to thousands a month. And I'm good. Like I don't need a lot of clients to have a sustainable business,
It's something I say to my clients all the time, Matthew, where you do not need every bit of work that comes through the front door. You need more than your fair share of the good stuff. And it is
very right, Shaun.
And when I work with any law firm, I do a survey. It's an anonymous survey. And one of the questions in the survey is, does your firm make you work for clients who are difficult and unprofitable? The answer is always yes. The lowest percentage of yeses is 50%. The highest percentage of yeses in one firm was 96%. So 96% of the people responding saying, yeah, we have to work for clients who are unprofitable and difficult to deal with. And then it begs the question, well, why? Why is this happening? And then the answer is because the law firm is badly led, badly managed, and the culture of that firm is we've got to take on every bit of work that comes in. And it is coming back to, changing the legal model. Then you need that paradigm shift that is going to say, we need to do something different. And I can tell you recently with one project that I've just finished with a big law firm. It was a 5-day project. And on day one, the CEO is in the meeting with me with 20 pioneer penguins. And we do a day where they hear me say, it's okay to turn work away. Is that okay, Mr. CEO? Yes, it is fine. Yeah. So they hear from their boss, it's okay to turn work away. They hear all clients are not the same. All transactions are not the same. And it is okay to price clients differently if they're going to be difficult. And so they heard all this. So they went away. I went back on week 2. My standard question is, all right, anybody had any successes? And this one lawyer said, yeah, I've had some successes. I'm a residential conveyancing lawyer. I heard you say that all clients are not the same. We can price difficult clients if we think they're going to be difficult, price accordingly. And she said, no, I took a call and it was for somebody purchasing a property for 1.4 million. Our standard price for that is going to be £3,750. And then as I spoke to the client, I realized it was going to be really difficult. Sounded a bit arrogant, sounded a bit pompous. I didn't like him. I thought he's going to be really demanding. And so I decided to add on £2,000. So when it came to giving the price, I said it's 5,750. And I said, and what did the client say? He said, fine. So now the question for you, what level of qualification was that lawyer? Have a guess.
I bet it was a she, and I bet she was young.
I was thinking older man.
Okay, she was a she. She was 19. She is a first-year solicitor apprentice. And I went up to the boss up and said, that young lawyer that you've got, that newly qualified young lawyer is amazing. And the CEO said, no, she's not qualified. She has just started on a 5-year solicitor apprenticeship. And I now use this example everywhere with her permission. And I put a picture up of her and said, we've got to be more like Macy, because if you can be doing that at 19, you're going to have a great career ahead of you. And those are the people that if I was in that firm next door, I'd be trying to poach a solicitor apprentice, not necessarily a head of department. I want the people who are brave. And her response to me was, well, you don't ask, you don't get, and I thought, good on you. She'll have a very successful career and she'll make a load of money.
Yeah.
The industry tries very hard to beat that kind of bravery out of people by the time they get to about 24, 25.
And that's one of the problems of some of the culture in law firms is toxic. And, and again, it's calling that out when you see it. Look,
Shaun, I just want to say one more thing as we wrap up here.
Yeah.
I know we're at time, is I really love your plane analogy. And I've heard it before in other contexts too, because not only are they paying for different things, and I can't remember, you may have just joined when Shaun was talking about it, but the person sitting next to you regardless of if you're in first class or business class or whatever, is paying a different price than you.
Yeah.
Talk about price discrimination client to client, even when they're getting the same exact service, right?
Yeah.
So every client you could charge, the airlines are doing it, so people are okay with it. Well, why did this person get a better deal than me? Well, they hired me 3 months ago, and you're hiring me today and you want this turnaround tomorrow. It's the same work, but
Yeah.
it's an estate plan or whatever it is, but they hired, like they gave me plenty of time to work on it. Right. So like you buy a ticket, today, or you buy a ticket, 6 months ago, you're going to get a different price for the seat right next to the person. So like, I think the plane analogy, you could go far with that.
Wow. Let's end it there. Matthew, always a pleasure to speak to you, my friend. Thank you so much for making time. Colin, lovely to meet you for the first time. I've been following you on LinkedIn for ages. Abby, thank you so much for coming. We must do that brunch that we've talked about doing and then never got round to doing.
Yeah.
But thanks very much for coming to the colony. Matthew, I'll send you to the link so you can do your magic on it, and look forward to seeing you guys sometime soon. All right.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.